welcome. Hope you're having a great day so far. My name is Tracy. If this is your first time joining my channel, first of all, welcome. I do lots of different things here. I talk about the Bible, I talk about thrifting, I talk about animals. You just never know what you may see. I'm actually in this video going to be doing a Bible study. You guys have probably noticed in my shorts, I cover one Bible chapter a day. It's just a short little snippet about one chapter each day. And I had been doing a study where I covered 7 chapters each week. So I started with Genesis 1, and for example, we did like Genesis 1 through 7 the first week, and then 14 through 21, so on and so forth. I kind of felt like that was too broad, so I'm going to try to do my videos in a little different format. So I'm going to be narrowing it down to 3 chapters, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about Exodus chapters 15 through 17. I'm also going to be incorporating something different into my Bible study videos. We'll be doing Bible study together, but I want to kind of make them a little less formal. I don't want to be so much of a talking head. So what I want you to do is grab your Bible. We're going to be starting in Exodus with chapter 15. Grab your Bible, and before we get started, I want to show you something special.
So, I want you to meet Bobby. Bobby is my rescue squirrel that I just released this week. And let's see if Bobby will come down and say hello. He's in actually my Screech Owl box. Some of you maybe remember seeing Dwight in the Screech Owl box. So we'll see if we can get Bobby to come down and visit. Bobby? Come down. I have your little block. He went back in his house. Bobby, Bobby, Bobby. So we'll get back to Bible study and come back in a few minutes to see if maybe Bobby might come out.
So like I said, I'm going to be doing a little different format with my Bible study videos, and I want to just start incorporating some things that I experience in my everyday life that I have the opportunity to see God in, kind of God wink moments. And one of those God wink moments, actually several wink moments lately, has been caring for that little squirrel, Bobby. So I'll be telling you more about that as we go along, but let's jump into our first chapter today, which is Exodus chapter 15. Now this chapter, you will notice, is a song of deliverance. You'll see that it's actually, it looks like it's maybe written like a poem. It is a song, and this is actually, some say this song of Moses is the oldest recorded song in the world. So this was actually a song created by Moses, and like I said, some feel like this may be the oldest recorded song in the world. This is actually Moses's and Miriam's song of deliverance and praise after God led Israel out of Egypt and saved them by parting the Red Sea. That's a very well-known story in the Bible. We actually talked about this story in the previous Bible study that I was doing, where we covered 7 chapters. And now they are kind of praising God, thanking Him for His deliverance through the Red Sea. Now, a footnote that I want to share with you has to do with verse 20. Verse 20 is part of the song, and it says, "Then Miriam, the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine and led all the women as they played their tambourines and danced. And Miriam sang this song, 'Sing to the Lord, for He has triumphed gloriously. He has hurled both horse and rider into the sea.'" So the footnote for this particular verse, let's see here, says, okay, it talks about how Miriam was called a prophet, not only because she received revelations from God, but also because of her musical skill. Prophecy and music were often closely related in the Bible, which I thought was super interesting. I had never really thought about that before. We read about lots and lots of prophets in the Bible. We read about music throughout the Bible, but I've never really known that they were very closely related. So evidently they are very closely related. So some things to remember from this chapter. We don't necessarily have to write songs of praise, but we need to continue to write down and thank God for the blessings and the work that He continues to do in our lives. We can keep a list. We can write down answered prayers. We can say them out loud in gratitude. And this is important, we can revisit them when we are discouraged. So maybe when we feel like our prayers aren't being answered, or maybe not being answered as quickly as we would like, we can look back through all these different times that God has worked in our lives and be encouraged by that, and have our spirit renewed in seeing the good things that He has already done throughout our life.
Well, Bobby decided to come out sooner than I thought. Come here, Bobby. Come here. I've got you a block. Come here. Come here. Here he comes. Come here, Bobby. Come on. I got you a block. He is this is technically his third day free. So he's still learning the ropes. Come down. I've got a block for you. Come on, buddy. Come on. Here he comes. Here we go. Here's your block. Here's your block. You want to take it? There you go. All right, you go march on your little block.
Let's look now at Exodus chapter 16. At the beginning of the chapter, it says, "Then the whole community of Israel set out from Elim and journeyed into the wilderness of Sin between Elim and Mount Sinai." So this area called Sin was a sandy, rocky area. It was a very barren area, and it was actually the perfect place for God to test and also shape the character of His people. It says, "There too the whole community of Israel complained about Moses and Aaron." So it happened again. As soon as the people experienced inconveniences, they began to grumble and complain. They actually went on to say they wanted to be back in Egypt, but that what they really wanted was an easier life. They wanted an easier life. Let's think about our own lives. When things get hard, do you ever want an easier life? I know for me, I am certainly guilty of this. I can think specifically of my work. For those of you who don't know, I am a travel teacher, and I go to high schools all throughout the country helping students get prepared to take the ACT exam, the SAT exam, and from mid-January until mid-April, that's like my busiest season, and I am gone a lot more than I'm home during those few months. And there are some times when I'm traveling that I get really, really tired. For example, if I'm flying somewhere and there have been delays or cancellations or changed gates or missed flights, all of the things, I can get very tired and discouraged. Some days I may finish a class when school is over and have to drive 3 or 4 hours to another hotel, and I get tired. Sometimes my flight has been delayed. I may get into an airport at like 1:30 a.m., have to drive to a hotel, get up the next morning at 5 a.m. to be at a school. So it gets crazy. Anyway, I say all that to say this. There's a lot of times when I'm in those situations and I'm tired that I get grumpy, grouchy, I complain, and I have to admit, I think, Tracy, what in the world are you doing? It would be so much easier to just have a regular job and be at home in your own bed and sleep and be at home with your family, with your husband, with your animals. What are you doing? But here's what I've learned. I always try to not rush and make a decision when I am in that state of mind. I've found that no matter if it's just 2 hours of sleep, when I wake up that next morning, I have a fresh, new attitude and I see things through a different lens. So it even talks about in this chapter, waiting until the next day to think about things. Verse 11 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the Israelites' complaints. Now tell them, in the evening you will have meat to eat, and in the morning you will have all the bread you want. Then you will know I am the Lord your God." Now he goes on to give them specific directions about how much they should gather. He tells them, don't hoard up the food. There's going to be plenty. He also gives them directions about not collecting food on the Sabbath. He says, collect enough food on the 6th day to where you can rest on the 7th day and there will be plenty of food. Well, people being people, the Israelites being people, being human, some of them disobey these rules. And for example, if they were hoarders, if they gathered up too much bread and meat, the meat and the bread would spoil before the next day because God had said, only gather what you need for that day. Again, those who wanted to continue to gather food on the Sabbath, they would not be able to gather the food. I knew that was going to happen. I saw someone pull in next door, and inevitably my dogs bark when someone pulls in next door. But you still have people who were breaking the rules, even though God had promised provision. And how often do we do that? I know I'm guilty. I know God keeps his promises, and I'm a control freak, and sometimes I want to have things in my own control or feel like that I have things in my own control. So if we look at the rest of the chapter, we can see some more information there about the instructions that were given as far as the manna and the quails that had been sent to provide food. So lots of different instructions and directions there. Something that I wanted to share with you had to deal with the Sabbath. And this deals specifically with verse 23. It says the Israelites were not to work on the Sabbath, not even to cook food. Why? God knew that the busy routine of daily living could distract people from heartfelt worship of him. Work, family responsibilities, and recreation can crowd our schedule so tightly that we don't take time to worship. Carefully guard your time with God. And I've talked about this in a couple of our previous Bible study videos. I think it's super, super important that we observe the Sabbath as much as we can. Even if it's not Sunday, dedicating one day to rest, worship, refilling our cups is very, very important. On Sundays, I really, really try to rest. We go to church. I don't usually cook on Sundays. I try to have all my laundry done on Sundays. And I really also try to kind of stay off social media on Sundays because that gives me an opportunity to rest. I try to do things that are more God-centered. For example, maybe read a book, that is God-centered or do a little extra Bible study. I don't always do that, but I do try to keep that in mind. So I encourage you to also keep in mind ways that you can observe the Sabbath and keep that day holy and keep your focus as much as possible on God. Our last chapter we're going to talk about in this video is Exodus chapter 17. So I want to read the first part to you. It says, "At the Lord's command, the whole community of Israel left the wilderness of Sin and moved from place to place. Eventually, they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water there for the people to drink. So once more, the people complained against Moses. 'Give us water to drink,' they demanded." So we have some grumbling Israelites yet again. We see that the Lord tells Moses prays about this, goes to the Lord, takes this matter to him. And the Lord says to Moses, "Walk out in front of the people. Take your staff, the one you used when you struck the water of the Nile, and call some of the elders of Israel to join you. I will stand before you on the rock at Mount Sinai. Strike the rock, and water will come gushing out. Then the people will be able to drink." So Moses struck the rock as he was told, and water gushed out as the elders looked on. So another miraculous miracle from God providing this water for those grumbling Israelites. Now, in the second part of this chapter, we see Israel defeat the Amalekites. And who were these Amalekites? Well, my footnote tells me that they were actually descendants of Amalek, who was a grandson of Esau. Remember Esau? We read about Esau several chapters back. They were a fierce nomadic tribe that lived in the desert region of the Dead Sea. And you can hear a cowboy barking outside. Yeah, I'm doing a video, so he has to bark. Anyway, they made part of their livelihood by conducting frequent raids on other settlements and carrying off plundered goods. One of the greatest insults in Israelite culture was to call someone a friend of Amalek. When the Israelites entered the region, the Amalekites saw this as a perfect opportunity for profit. But this hostile tribe was moving in on the wrong group, a people led by God. For the Israelite slaves to defeat such a warlike nation was more than enough proof that God was with them as he had promised to be. Excuse me just one moment. I'm back. So I've decided I can make perfect videos. I can edit out all the craziness, but you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be keeping it real with you guys. So sometimes we're going to be interrupted. I may have to pause and come back, but you know what? It's all good. So we were talking about the Israelites defeating the Amalekites. And one thing that was interesting in this chapter is it says, I'm looking at verse 10. It says, "So Joshua did what Moses had commanded and fought the army of Amalek. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur climbed to the top of a nearby hill. As long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage." So literally, Moses had to hold his hand up for things to go well. Now, his hand or his arm started to get tired, and it says that, "So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. They stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands so his hands held steady until sunset. As a result, Joshua overwhelmed the army of Amalek, And what's interesting about this is, if you think about it, we need to lift up or hold up the hands of our spiritual leaders. So just as they helped Moses lifted up his hands, we need to do the same for our spiritual leaders. Shouldering some responsibility, lending a word of encouragement, and offering a prayer are ways of refreshing spiritual leaders in their work. So I thought that is something for us all to think about. I know myself included, we can be super critical of our spiritual leaders. And, sometimes in certain instances, which I've been in those cases, criticism is warranted. But most of the time, we're probably criticizing our spiritual leaders for minor things, and instead of criticizing, we should lift them up. We should lift them up. All right, so that's going to wrap up our Bible study for this time. I hope that you like my new format for these videos. I don't want to just be a talking head. I want to have just a light Bible study, digging a little deeper into the Word, taking you along with me, showing you some things in my home. Some of them will be connected to Jesus, some not necessarily, but just to kind of share a little of my life with you and welcome you into my home as we study the Bible together. So be sure, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. That really helps my channel out. Click the like button and share this with a friend that you think might enjoy it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.